Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has pleaded not guilty to charges of bribery and fraud. These are the corruption-related charges that Netanyahu has been dealing with for a few years now. But because of COVID, the trial had been postponed. After pleading not guilty and about 20 minutes into this hearing, he just abruptly walked out without giving any reason for why he was leaving. And he did try to make it seem as though everything was normal, there are no problems. But to be clear, the charges he's facing are pretty serious. And there is an election about 6 weeks away. This will be the fourth election in Israel in just 2 years amid growing protests against Benjamin Netanyahu. But for anyone who might be celebrating the possible ouster of a right-wing Israeli leader, don't celebrate too quickly, because should he lose this upcoming election, keep in mind that his challengers are actually quite conservative. But here's what we know so far regarding the charges against him. Netanyahu faces charges of fraud and breach of trust in what's being referred to as Case 1000, in which he is suspected of illicitly accepting about $200,000 in cigars, champagne, and other gifts from the Hollywood-based Israeli movie mogul Aaron Milken, and from Australian billionaire magnate James Packer. He's also facing charges for essentially trading positive news coverage for media deregulation in Israel. So there are two main charges against him that are being looked into, and he is standing trial for that. Netanyahu's Likud party still maintains a lead in the most recently published opinion polls. However, he will have to contend with new rivals from the right, as well as accusations that he has been mishandling the public health crisis, coronavirus, and the economic consequences of the pandemic to avoid standing trial. Cenk, much like Donald Trump, he refused to shut down cities when he was being told by health experts to do it as a result of the number of coronavirus cases surging. So people are understandably furious and upset with how he's handled coronavirus as well. So his popularity is certainly dipping, but we'll see how that plays out in the election.
Yeah, so this got a couple of different political facets. So number one, him coming and leaving the courtroom is just political theater. It was like when Mike Pence went to that Colts game and then pretended to be outraged and left when anyone took a knee during the national anthem. It was prearranged. So he told supporters not to come to the courtroom. He came without family and without any ministers by his side, which he usually has. And so all of that is an effort to say, this is no big deal. And I'll even leave in the middle because that's how little I care about it. You should ignore this. That's the political theater that he's playing. Now, does he really think it's unimportant? Well, Anna just told you they actually were disastrous in their response to coronavirus. Per capita, they had some of the worst death rates and infection rates in Israel. Now, usually Israeli government is fairly competent in what they do. Oftentimes for the better, sometimes for the worse in the middle of wars. But here he blew it because he's a right winger and he doesn't care about people. So he brazenly mishandled the situation. Now, in a mad rush, they're trying to vaccinate everybody, and so that Netanyahu can take credit for the vaccinations and hope that people forget the record death rate from the guy who is a right winger and claimed the main thing he was going to do was protect Israeli lives. When it actually came to protecting Israeli lives, he didn't care. Now, you want to know when he actually did a curfew and a lockdown? When his trial was about to start. So when the rates of infection were worse, he would not do a lockdown. But his trial was about to start. He's like, oh, do we need a lockdown? I can't go to the trial. They're gonna have to delay it because we're in the middle of a lockdown. So this is not just me, it's Israeli press. It's not just Israeli left. A lot of people in Israel saw that obvious game that he was playing. So this is just a continuation of that game.
Yeah, that's part of the reason why you're seeing these protests against Netanyahu in Israel. And related to his trial and all of the problems that he's facing right now is this new announcement by the International Criminal Court regarding a possible investigation into war crimes committed against Palestinians. So the court, by the way, ruled that its jurisdiction does extend to groups occupied by Israel, or the group occupied by Israel in the 1967 Middle East War. So again, this has to do with the treatment of Palestinians, the building of settlements. And I want to also be clear that the ICC has not committed to doing an investigation into these war crimes. They're just stating that they would have the jurisdiction to do so. And of course, immediately you have people like Benjamin Netanyahu freaking out about it and releasing statements like this.
When the ICC investigates Israel for fake war crimes, this is pure anti-Semitism. The court established to prevent atrocities like the Nazi Holocaust against the Jewish people is now targeting the one state of the Jewish people.
Right, so of course he's gonna say that because it immediately makes people not wanna touch that topic at all, especially if they're gonna be critical of the Israeli government for any reason, especially when it comes to the treatment of Palestinians. You're anti-Semitic, how dare you, the fake war crimes, except you have Palestinian, like, the Gaza Strip is occupied right now. They cut off humanitarian aid to Palestinians during a time of absolute crisis worldwide with this pandemic. I mean, there are serious concerns here. And again, the ICC is just like, I don't know, man, like maybe we'll look into these war crimes. We don't know, maybe. And then immediately, this is anti-Semitism. How could you do this? This is wrong. So we'll see how it goes, but that's where Netanyahu stands on it. And of course, one quick point I want to make about the United States. The spokesperson for the State Department, Ned Price, is 100% behind the Israeli government on this. He says that the United States objects to today's International Criminal Court decision regarding the Palestinian situation. Israel is not a state party to the Rome Statute. We will continue to uphold President Biden's strong commitment to Israel and its security, including opposing actions that seek to target Israel unfairly. He's gay though, Ned Price is gay. So that, I mean, we made history with a gay guy in that position. So we shouldn't in any way disagree with him, and just pay attention to the identity politics that the Biden administration is engaging in. Awesome.
Yeah. No one has any problems with Israel defending itself. So don't hide behind nonsense. The issue is whether they committed war crimes in defending themselves. Otherwise, the Nazis could have said, well, hey, listen, we're just defending ourselves. Well, no, they didn't. Well, of course they didn't. They were Nazis, right? So my point is that you just saying we were defending ourselves is not a defense of war crimes. It never has been, and it isn't now. So the United States knows that. That's just basically them saying, it doesn't matter if we have a Republican or Democratic administration. And it doesn't matter if the leader of Israel is left wing or right wing. And he could be a monster like Netanyahu. And we will always do whatever he tells us to do. So let's just keep it real. That's what's happening. Now, on the issue of anti-Semitism, Netanyahu is partnering with right-wing evangelical leaders who are deeply and obviously and over the top anti-Semitic. So when they moved the embassy, Trump made a point of bringing almost the most anti-Semitic evangelical pastors he could find, with clearly on the record saying awful things about Jewish people, and just kind of like rub it in. Like, don't get us wrong, we don't actually like you. So we're gonna send in pastors as we move the embassy to let you know the whole reason we're doing this is because of end times prophecies in our lunatic minds, where we'd like to start a World War III here and have all the Jews killed. We don't want you to get mistaken for our so-called love of Israel to be confused with loving actual Jews, which we don't. That was a message that Trump sent, and Netanyahu has said, thank you, sir, may I have another. But now to cover up his war crimes, he'd like to hide behind fake charges of anti-Semitism. Yeah, not interested, not remotely interested.
I mean, all you have to do is look at the treatment of Jewish people in the United States under the Trump administration. People who were emboldened to carry out acts of hate against Jewish people in the United States. They were emboldened by Donald Trump and his rhetoric. I mean, one of the first things that happened under his watch was that hate march in Charlottesville, where you have people chanting, "The Jews will not replace us." And Trump's response to that was that there were some very fine people on that side. So, I mean, it's absolute nonsense when anyone argues that right wingers in the United States are like super, they're not anti-Semitic and they're super pro-Israel. You really have to look into the reasons why they claim to be pro-Israel. It's not so much about protecting Jewish individuals, but it's more about, evangelical religion, what they believe is going to happen in the end times, and it's just absolutely sad and pathetic that they get held up on a pedestal, whereas people who have legitimate concerns about what's happening by the Israeli government get, passed off as nothing more than anti-Semites. If you want to keep people safe in Israel, the best way to do it is to stop, these provocative actions against Palestinians, including continuing to build settlements on their land. That leads to more war. And let's stop talking about this as if the Israeli government and the Palestinians have the same military capability. They don't. We funded the Iron Dome for Israel. The Palestinians don't have that. They don't have these types of weapons. They don't have the ability to defend themselves the way the Israeli government has the ability to defend itself. So there's this asymmetrical situation going on, and having a frank conversation about it immediately gets shut down because exactly what you saw Netanyahu do in that video is usually the response you'll get from right wingers.
Okay, let me explain who Robert Jeffress is real quick, because it's related to this. He was brought to almost every Jewish ceremony that Trump did, including the opening of the embassy in Jerusalem. He said that Jews are, quote, going to hell. He said Islam is wrong, it's a heresy from the pit of hell. Mormonism is wrong, it is heresy from the pit of hell. Judaism, you can't be saved by being a Jew. And he went on to say that Mormons, Muslims, Hindus, and Jews would all be going to hell, and that hell would be filled with them. So you bring a guy who says hell will be filled with Jews to your opening of the embassy, American embassy in Israel, and then you tell us Netanyahu kissed that guy's ass. Netanyahu was so endearing to that guy who think that all the Jews are going to hell. And then Netanyahu then comes and, I'm so concerned about anti-Semitism. You were standing next to one of the biggest anti-Semites there are in America. And I'm talking about Pastor Jeffress, let alone Trump. The Jews will not replace us is what they chanted in Charlottesville. And Trump said there are very fine people on that side. You're standing next to a Nazi apologist and a guy who thinks Jews are going to hell. And then after you commit war crimes, you tell us you're concerned about anti-Semitism. Netanyahu is a gigantic liar, a total and utter warmonger, and credit to the Israeli judiciary for being honest and actually putting him in trial for one other thing he is, which is deeply corrupt.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.